This was my first time losing consciousness. You often hear of regaining consciousness on top of a bed, but this is my first time actually experiencing it. Hello, are you okay? Realizing that I was awake, a young doctor called out to me. I didn't intend to respond, but it seemed my body language had told him I was conscious. My head was wrapped in bandages. The scratches all over my body had also been treated. My sense of pain also returned with my consciousness, causing me to groan from intense pain shooting all throughout me. Do not try to get up. Just stay lying down, please. It seems that you took quite a few blows to the head. I want you to stay rested so we can monitor your condition for at least the next 24 hours. Where is this? This is my clinic. Pleased to meet you. My name is Irie. I remember this young doctor was the one the car headed the opposite way earlier. Is there somebody here? Where's Oishi? I'll call him over. There's no smoking inside the clinic, so I had him smoke outside. Dr. Irie left the room to call Oishi. The scenery outside the window was tinted with gold. The pouring rain had stopped, but the voices of the Higurashi heralding the cooling temperature. I felt the tone of the Higurashi's voices was comforting. Eventually, I could hear heavy footsteps coming closer, which I reckoned to be Oishi's. The fog that was enveloping my head slowly faded back to reality. What had happened since then? What happened to the boy? What about the reinforcements from Tokyo? The boy from the door to the room flew open, allowing Dr. Irie and Oishi to enter. So, there's no serious damage, is there? I can't promise that. I assessed the wound to his head was dangerous the moment I saw it. Got it. I want to have a little chat alone with him for a bit. Would you mind? Yeah, go ahead. Call me if anything happens. Oishi, after basically forcing Dr. Irie outside, shut the door. How are you feeling? I did something I'm not used to, so I'm pretty banged up all over. Oishi brought over a folding chair that was leaning against the wall and sat down beside the bed. Were the perpetrators arrested? Unfortunately, no. They've probably already fled the prefecture or are being hidden by the villagers. Well, we won't let them get away. What about the minister's grandson? They're taking care of him at the station, but your colleagues from Tokyo are rather insistent that nothing be recorded. She doesn't like that too much. The kidnapping was probably a confidential matter, so this custody was also being held under the wraps. How the kidnapping of the minister's grandson would be handled, how it would be covered up, treated like it never happened. Would it be handled like by the brass? If this case ended without the nation going into an uproar about it, then our job had been done. The possibility the minister had negotiated with the perpetrators couldn't be ruled out. But something like that was no longer my concern. My role in this case was over. Sorry for the trouble. You must think that public safety is rather an unseemly place, don't you? Oops. Sorry, that was Akasaka. Sorry for the trouble. You must think that the public safety is a rather unseemly place, don't you? No. We all work on the government's dime. Oishi laughed boisterously. When we first met, I was somewhat prejudiced against Oishi, but now that feeling was gone completely. It'd be more convenient for us if this case was handled properly instead of being hidden away. Oops. If that happened, we'd be able to have something to go at with the Sonozaki family with, since they were behind it all. If we just start poking around, we get all sorts of pressure on us. Are you going to continue to fight against the Sonozaki family after this? Nah, there's all sorts of dark rumors swirling around them, but it's not like I have a personal grudge. It'd be wise not to step on any toes here. Ha! Interesting that he mentions that, because we know in the future that he is after them afterward. So they must have done something that Oishi found is a grudge. Who knows? Oishi laughed happily, and I couldn't help but laugh along. Oh, that's right. There's a word at the station from the prefectural police. Oops, that's Oishi's voice. Sorry. Oh, that's right. There was a word at the station from the prefectural police. Your colleagues arrived in Nagoya and are driving up there right now. You got your battle scars, so you're being recalled to Tokyo, apparently. So that's how it's shaken up. Good job. Your work in Okinomiya is safely over. I was being recalled to Tokyo. I inadvertently breathed a sigh of relief when I heard those words. I'm deeply thankful for your cooperation, Oishi. It seems the collaboration fee I paid you didn't go to waste. I kind of meant that as a joke, though. Oishi took out his wallet, casually pulled out several large bills, and jammed them into the breast pocket of my shirt. This isn't a refund on the collaboration fee, you hear? This is just me gifting you a little spending money. The booze around here is pretty good. Use this to buy yourself a little souvenir. Oishi flashed me a grin. If your injuries turned out not to be too serious, call me before you head back to Tokyo, will you? The old man and Sato said they'd like to sit at the table with you again. Oh my. Can't refuse that. And no tricks this time. Just some plain old fun. They always say that. This world is done for if an active officer can cheat that blatantly. It's not that often we meet someone who's more than a match for us. It's too bad you're going back to Tokyo. When I heard the words going back to Tokyo from Oishi, I was reminded once again that I was relieved from my duties. Soon, Yukie would be giving birth. It might still be possible to attend the delivery that I had one time given up on. When I thought that, the pain from my injuries became trivial. I wanted to hurry back to Tokyo and see Yukie at once. Can you pretend that your injuries are a bit more serious and hang around Okinomiya for a bit? I can introduce you to a few nice places. Of course, I won't make you pay for everything. I'm terribly sorry, but I have to take a rain check on that. My wife is due to give birth any day now. I want to hurry back home. Oh my, I didn't know that. You shouldn't be hanging around here. You have to hurry back home. For a while after that, Oishi asked all sorts of questions about my wife, teasing and bantering with me. Well then, how do you feel? You can get up? Yeah, it's not so bad thanks to you. I can get up and walk no problem. I stood up and shuffled around for a bit, which seemed to amuse Oishi. Nah, I just thought you might not feel comfortable at the hospital in Hinamizawa. Dr. Irie said he wanted you to stay overnight, but we still haven't caught the perpetrators. For the time being, this is enemy territory for you after all. Are you saying this hospital isn't safe? Well, Dr. Irie is somebody who's well regarded in the community. I don't think anything would happen while you're here, but I'm more worried about your mental health. I had relaxed a bit now, that things had progressed this far, but it was exactly as Oishi had said. When I realized that this was enemy territory, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. With only one thing left for me to do was leave, the chance that I would come to harm was logically fairly low. But that didn't mean I was completely safe. That's right. If I'm just going to be lying down, then doing it in a hotel bed wouldn't be all that different. Right. I also think that's for the best. At that moment, I caught the glimpse of the clock over Oishi's shoulder. It was evening. The hours where I could call Yukie at the hospital were almost over. I wanted to tell her as quickly as possible that I would soon be back at her side. I want to call Yukie at the hospital. Is there a public phone in the lobby? You newlyweds are all like this. If I recall correctly, there's one on the register. I'll be waiting here, so go ahead. Oishi, laughing while saying he was jealous, opened up the window, pulled out a cigarette, even though he was in the hospital room. Appreciative of how considerate Oishi was, I sat out to the lobby to find the phone. The lobby was just a short distance down the hallway from the hospital room. I thought that this hospital was a bit too grand for a village like this, but of course it was nothing that was compared to the general hospital Yukie was admitted to. Running inside the hospital probably wasn't the best of manners, but calling hours would soon end, so I dashed over in a hurry. There was nobody else in the lobby. It may have been in the evening, but there was nobody at the reception desk. While this might actually be lucky for me, I wasn't planning to have a conversation to feel guilty about. It'd still be embarrassing to have somebody listen between the conversation between me and Yukie. Taking a quick look around, I soon found the payphone. Digging around my pockets, I grabbed a few coins. I was calling Tokyo from here, so I would burn through this amount fairly quickly. I picked up the receiver, inserted a coin, and dialed the number for Yukie's hospital, which I had completely memorized at this point. The number for Yukie's hospital had a lot of 8s and 9s, so dialing inevitably took some time. Normally, it wouldn't be a big deal, but currently any time was precious. However, I felt that something was strange as I was dialing in the number. I don't know how exactly to put it, but it was as if the receiver was too quiet. That unique white noise from the telephone line wasn't there. Somehow I felt I wasn't getting any feedback from the phone, and without getting any response, I hung up the receiver to try again. The coin popped out from the return slot. I reinserted the coin and began dialing once again, but the receiver was still dead silent. What is this? Is it disconnected? While I was wasting time like this, the amount I had to spend talking with Yukie shrunk. I began to feel needlessly impatient. Excuse me! I felt the presence of someone on the other side of the glass. I was called out. There was an immediate response, and a man who seemed like a pharmacist came over. Yes, how can I help you? Pardon me? This phone seems to be acting a little strange. Could you look at it? The man came over, testing various things with a receiver pressed to his ear. Come to think of it, this is someone who worked at the hospital, not someone from the phone company. Just as I didn't know much about phones, neither would he. Huh? What's this? The man held up the cord that connected the phone to the wall. It was completely severed. What the heck is that? Well, this is a dilly of a pickle. You can't do anything with this until somebody from the phone company comes and fixes it. If you're looking for a phone, you want to use one in the office? I didn't want the people in the hospital office around while I was talking. Is there another payphone close by? Let's see. If you leave here and follow the road, you'll come out to the shopping district. I think there's a smoke shop on the corner around here. If you head that way, you should be able to find one soon enough. I was dressed in a hospital gown. I was wearing sandals on my feet. My head was wrapped in bandages. Just looking at me, you could tell I was a hospital patient. No matter how I looked at it, I was not dressed to be wandering outside, but that's where the impetuousness of youth came in. Choosing the chance to talk to Yukie for even a little longer, I headed outside of my current state. Follow the road to the shopping district. Should be able to find one soon enough. With only those 2 lines as my guide, I ran outside the gates of the hospital. With the village quickly nestled in the valley when the sun set, it got dark quickly. The sparse streetlights lit up enough to start attracting moths. The Higurashi, knowing the time for their chorus was soon at a close, redoubled their fragile cries. Finding the payphone wasn't as easy as the person in the hospital had suggested. Was it still up ahead? Did I miss it already? Was I just getting farther away? As I was about to be crushed by the wave of uncertainty towering over me, I found the shop on this corner with cigarettes written on a small sign. Sorry about my chair. My joy spurred me onwards. Just as I was heard at the hospital, set next to the counter of the cigarette shop was an antiquated payphone. I wasn't wearing a watch. I didn't know what time it was. I probably didn't have that much time left, though, but it was enough. Just as long as I could tell Yukie my job was done, and I'd be heading home soon. Picking up the receiver, I slid a coin down the slot. I felt that something was strange, just like at the hospital. Even after inserting the coin, the phone showed up no response. I hung up the receiver and tried putting in the coin one more time. There was absolutely no response. This phone was dead. It couldn't be. Thinking that, I felt the cord that protruded from the back of the phone. Doing that, my hands found the end of a completely severed line. What is this? Having now had the same thing happen twice, my bafflement was accompanied by a sense of unease. It seemed the cord had been severed cleanly by a sharp blade of some sort. And I may be mistaken, but it didn't look like much time had passed since it was cut. Excuse me, hello? Opening up the booth window of the tobacco shop, I looked for someone in the dimly lit interior. Eventually, there was sounds of somebody plodding down the stairs, and an old lady appeared. The old lady's plodding in lethargic steps for some reason only served to make me more frantic. You need some cigarettes? I'll need to go get my husband. I'm not here to buy cigarettes, rather, this phone here. Realizing that saying the phone was broken, asked them to take a look that was going to get me nowhere, I swallowed back my words. Sorry, it seems this phone is broken, and I was wondering if you could tell me if there's another payphone. The old lady moved her jaw up and down slowly, as if chewing the meaning of my words. It seemed she wouldn't thoroughly understand until she had digested things thoroughly. So the phone's broken. That's a dilly of a pickle. You should try another payphone. The old lady directed me to another payphone that seemed quite a ways away. Her way of telling me was so long-winded that I inadvertently started to get impatient. At that moment, I spotted a clock in the dim interior of the store. The minute hand was just about to point straight up. Even if there was a phone right here that I could use, I'd only be able to tell Yukie good night with the time I had left. On top of that, my destination was a remote payphone, which I didn't know the exact distance to. If I was in a normal state of mind, deciding to give up the phone today would be the natural thought process. But at the moment, I had become somewhat stubborn for some reason. Unable to use the phone in the hospital, and coming out here and still being unable to use one, there was no mistaking that I had become quite insistent on using a phone. Thank you very much. I'll try looking for that phone booth. Refusing her offer to draw me a map, I left the tobacco shop. According to the old lady, even though the phone booth was quite far away, it would be easy to find. If I just followed this road straight down, I'd eventually find it. Sandals flapping as I ran, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I admit I was quite steadfast about calling Yukie, but there were days where I was tired or busy when I wouldn't call her. Even today, my entire body was covered with injuries, and I was dead tired. On top of that, there wasn't much time left. It wouldn't be strange at all if today was one of those days I didn't call her, but having twice been foiled trying to call her, had I become hot-headed about it? Was I like a dog who was being told to stay with a piece of food dangling in my face? What am I doing? Even so, I somehow couldn't quell the uneasy feeling sitting in the pit of my stomach. It was like with the hospital phone, and the same with the one at the tobacco shop. Both cords were definitely not severed from being frayed by long years of use. The clean cuts indicate that someone had taken something sharp and deliberately cut them. But who and for what reason? The more I thought about it, the uneasier I felt, so I tried to push the thought aside. How much had I run so far? The scenery around me was no longer of that of a shopping district with residential buildings scattered about the lonely road. The surroundings had already grown dark. I was blatantly out too far for a quick phone call. It was quite obvious I was far removed from the hospital. I recalled the clock I saw at the tobacco shop. It might almost be time. I had run for quite a bit, so my breathing had grown quite ragged. If I just wanted to hear Yuki's voice, I should have just thrown away my reservations and borrowed the phone in the office. I regretted it a little. Well then, was it about time to give up? Just when I thought that, I saw the light in front of me. I finally found it. It was a phone booth. It seemed the light in the phone booth had recently been changed as it shone with a vivid white light, although the gloom of Hinamizawa as if it was nothing more than a gathering spot for moths. But in any case, I had finally found it. As my hand touched the door of the phone booth, I realized I was breathing and sweating heavily. I didn't know what time it was now, but even if it was just a moment, I might be able to get in touch with Yuki. Since I had spent all this effort getting here, turning back without even giving it a try was out of the question. Before I picked up the receiver, another wave of uneasiness washed over me. I was worried this phone cord might be severed as well. How was the cord in this phone booth? Squatting down, I followed the bundle of cables as they ran along the corner into the ceiling. At a glance, nothing was out of the ordinary. I ran my fingers as far as I could along the line to check it out. The only thing they found was a thick layer of dust, nothing out of the ordinary. I wonder if it was popular in Hinamizawa to cut the cords of paper as some sort of tasteless prank. It might be prudent to talk to Oishi about this later. Even if it was nothing more than a prank, it was still vandalism of public property. In any case, this one was fine this time. Pulling out the coin from my pocket with one hand, I picked up the receiver with the other. But this time, before the receiver even reached my ears, I felt something was off. The receiver was light. It was even more and a slightly unpleasant feeling. It felt almost sickening. To verify my source of displeasure, I peered at the receiver in my hand with a measure of reluctance. What the hell is this? The coiled cord that connected the receiver to the rest of the tip of the phone had been ripped apart, the tip of the cable swaying in the air. It was all I could do to restrain myself as a raw and unpleasant feeling worked its way back up my back, a type of dread. At the moment I heard the crunch of somebody stepping on gravel. The light was reflecting off the glass walls of the booth, leaving me unable to see outside into the darkness. I steeled myself and stepped out of the phone booth. The inside of the booth was lit with that strong light, which might have made it warmer in there. Just stepping outside, I could feel a chill wash over me, and there was the silhouette of a person. A small silhouette. The long hair of that silhouette was blown about by the cool breeze.
Injured people shouldn't be sneaking out of the hospital.
Somewhere in my head, I knew who this girl was. I didn't have any basis for it, but I knew that she was that girl.
Right, Akasaka?
She, Furude Rika, said it almost like it was a warning. Did you do this to the phone cord? Her expression remained unchanged. My question was left unanswered. In other words, no response. Regardless, I felt she had affirmed my suspicions. Why would you do something like this? Why? The last word had a tinge of anger behind it. I frantically tried to smooth things over, but she didn't seem very afraid.
There's nothing that can be done.
Huh? I interpreted her words as a meaning that I wasn't going to be in time for calling hours at the hospital. But thinking about it, that would have been a strange thing to say. Why would she know something like that? I could take what she had said to have any other meaning. She just stood there like a mannequin, not even moving an inch. Almost to the point that the wind wasn't occasionally rustling through her long hair, there would be an illusion that time had stopped.
I know very well that you think I'm disgusting, Akasaka.
Huh? No. That's not true. My denial came out almost like a bad piece composed for a poetry slam, but her words were right on the mark. I'd always felt something ominous and uncanny about her, ever since her strange threats at the shrine. She had noticed my expression was contrary to my words, seemingly laughing at the gap between them. Akasaka, you coward. I'm not a coward! Being laughed at by the small child didn't sit well with me, so I said that. Even if you find another phone, it's too late. That's right. She didn't even have to say it. I was absolutely too late. I might have already missed calling hours even by the time I reached this phone booth. I was too late. I had no options but to give up for today. Once I decided that my unhealthy obsession with phones suddenly faded. Even I thought that was strange that I was that obsessed. That strange obsession was now gone. I began to laugh at how hopeless I was. I mean, just looking at what I was wearing, it wasn't normal. A hospital gown and sandals. My head wrapped in bandages and my body completely soaked in sweat. It was a wonder the old lady at the tobacco shop wasn't surprised to see me. With wanting to hear Yuki's voice as my motive, I had trapezed around the town the entire evening. I didn't know whether to call it the follies of youth or simply plain embarrassing. In any case, it was all I could do but laugh at myself. Now there's nothing left for Akasaka to do tonight. You're right, there's nothing. I'll just quietly return to the hospital. That's fine. Do you know the way? I hope I do. She waved her little hand as I began to head back the way I came. She began to fall alongside me. Looking along her face, I could see she wore a mischievous smile, as if she was extremely interested in whether or not I would get lost. Is Rika's house also this way?
It is.
Won't your parents be mad if you're walking around alone this hour?
Not really. My parents are busy today, so they probably forgot about me.
Even then, it's best that you head on home. They'll definitely be angry.
Even if they are, it's more interesting to talk with Akasaka, so I'm fine.
She said that with a face free from worry as she looked at me once more and smiled. She showed me that smile. The eerie feeling surrounding her faded, but even then, she was still as mysterious to me as ever. We arrived at the corner I had turned at earlier, but it was much darker than before, with the point of view changed on the return trip. I wasn't very confident this was actually the corner I turned at. There's not a mistake, it had to be this corner. As I began to move my feet again, the girl grabbed onto my clothes.
Isn't Akasaka going back to the hospital?
Of course, at least I intend to. Am I going the wrong way? A short moment of silence. Eventually, still holding onto my clothes, she began to walk. It was the beginning to the walk of the hospital this mysterious girl would take me on. Ugh. The person who was running around cutting all the phone cords was you, wasn't it, Rika? You shouldn't do that anymore.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Really? She tried to play dumb, but it was written all over her face.
Nipa!
It was obvious she was trying to laugh it off, but that adorable smile of hers made me want to forgive her. I'm going to be a horrible father, aren't I? That momentary lapse in tension was erased by her next words. It's good that they found the grandson safe and sound. Unable to respond right away, I sunk into silence. I'd already learned this from Sato's info, didn't I? This girl, no. This entire village knew everything since the moment I stepped foot in it. I considered playing dumb, but in the end I chose not to. With everything being known already, there was no point in me feigning ignorance. Somehow. That's great. Now you can go back to Tokyo. Thank you. Are your injuries bad, Akasaka? Dunno, I haven't heard anything from the doctor yet, so I don't know if they are or not. Huh? Come to think of it, I vaguely remember being told to lie down and take it easy for at least 24 hours. Did that mean bed rest? The wounded shouldn't be sneaking out of the hospital. People shouldn't be cutting phone cords.
Me, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Then I don't know what you're talking about either. As we played dumb with each other, we both laughed at the same time. If somebody saw us laughing at each other like this, it would probably bring a smile to their lips. The chances of Akasaka leaving this village alive weren't very high. I don't want Akasaka to die, so I'm glad you're leaving the village alive. Rika, did you know who I was right from the beginning? She said nothing, but gave a firm nod. Well then, I think you know this, but we're probably somewhat of an enemy to the people in this village, I would think, but you still gave me lots of warnings. That's right. She said it at the time. She wouldn't warn somebody that she was okay with dying. She definitely said something like that. Then, I should probably be thanking you. You probably should. I'm your savior. Saying that, she puffed up her chest proudly. She said it jokingly, but the meaning behind those words was quite heavy. That was because whether I lived or died was a decision that might have been made in a place unbeknownst to me. She said those words with such an adorable smile that it took a few moments of silence for their weight to settle in. Sorry, I forget which one, if Rika's voice, if it's her higher voice or lower voice. I probably screwed up. Anyway, I've been to this place before. The Defense Alliance office was here. It was the stone steps leading up to the Furude Shrine. When I passed by before, I was so focused on finding the phone booth, I hadn't realized where I was. If I recall correctly, this shrine is Rika's house, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Looking up at the shrine grounds, it was brightly lit, and energetic voices could be heard. What was going on?
There's a festival today.
A festival?
The best and only festival in Hinamizawa. The Watanagashi Festival.
Watanagashi? Cotton drifting?
Just knowing the name is boring. Do you want to take a look?
She asked bluntly, but seeing that I looked interested, she climbed up a couple of steps and motioned for me to come. I was only going to go back and sleep anyways. If I had nothing else to do, it might not be a bad idea to go on her to a little detour. In the hostile territory that was this village, I didn't know what would happen if I ventured down the side road without Oishi. Even though I thought of the village like that when I was with this girl, I forgot all about it. In any case, even without anything to back it up, I felt as long as I was with her, none of the ill will from the village would befall me. That's why, even though I knew my cover was blown, I strangely had no qualms about setting foot into the heart of the Oniofuchi Defense Alliance's territory. Climbing up the grounds of the shrine, I could see there were about 3 pavilions set up, and the meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks from the village, no, the executives from the Defense Alliance, were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I could only see it as people from the village council drinking while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quite different than any festival I had ever seen.
See? It's quite a boring festival, isn't it?
This certainly doesn't look like a festival.
It's a festival that's happened since long ago, but as you can see, it's not like it used to be.
As if to chide the old folk, she said that, looking with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It's just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival. I feel sorry for the deity being celebrated here.
Give this sorry excuse for a festival of 5 to 6 more years and everybody in the village will start coming. Their ceremony will also be done properly and it will be a respectable festival again. When she said that, it was not so much wistful thinking, it was telling of a future that had already been determined. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost as if she was simply reporting the results. That's how it sounded, even though it was a baseless speculation. The way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. Oops. When I struggled to find the words to reply to her, she just wandered over to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in the state where I could afford to be left behind, I hurriedly followed after her. Passing through the copse of pine trees, and the strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. There, from the one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had showed me. As it had grown completely dark, the modest lights littered across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery. Looking at it like this village seems quite tranquil, she said with an indifferent look on her face. Just the other day, you said this village definitely wouldn't be submerged by the dam, didn't you? She didn't reply, seemingly relishing in the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair. Did that mean at the point of time the minister had already complied with the demands? Oops, sorry. She spun around, her gaze meeting mine, but she said nothing. She spoke nothing that would neither confirm nor deny what I just said. This case will probably remain shrouded in darkness. Headquarters probably doesn't want trouble from the scandal with the minister breaking out. There's no mistake that they threatened to kill the grandchild. The negotiations with the minister were successful, and the grandson was released. The one who saved the grandson was you. I wonder about that. The discovery of the wallet that started this chain of events, that alone was almost too convenient, I think. Ever since the moment that wallet was discovered, I felt something was odd. Oishi said it as well, that the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage, meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, I was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me.
I felt they put up quite a fight, but that might have all been part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they couldn't just say, "Here you go," and return the minister's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew public safety had realized this kidnapping case and were moving in on it. That's why, due to the actions of the public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely. The minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary. I don't know about these difficult things. Likewise, even for me, I can't make much sense of it, but there's one thing I can be certain of. It's just as you said, this village won't be submerged. The dam project will soon be over. That wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying, but I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. This village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves that I had to leave the house I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I just happened to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived for generations. It might be ignorant to call their desperate resistance an overreaction. I might not really be qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind. Still, aren't you glad? Why would that be? At the very least, with this, the peace will return to this village. Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take a few more months for it to be completely scraped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 to 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that their village wasn't going to be submerged at the bottom of the dam was still ways away. But it was no mistake the promise of peace and returning to the village was there. It turned out from beginning to end that it had already all been decided. Just as the girl had said, it was decided. There really wasn't a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravate an unpleasant situation. If I had never come here then, the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable manner. Peace in this village. When I nodded, she laughed as if to admonish me, but her face remained indifferent, expressionless. And then her eyes narrowed slightly as she snickered. Even though every year from now on, something bloody will occur. Rika, what are you talking about? As the wind blew in her hair, the girl, as if taking pleasure in that I was the only one who didn't know, continued to snicker as she looked at my face for a while. You see, in a few years, I'll be killed. Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if her expression had been cast in shadow, was smiling, amused, or resigned. You are? Why? It's a very unpleasant thing, though. It's also probably been decided already. Decided already? Who would decide that sort of thing? I'd like to know that as well. Turning her back to face me, she showed a resolute expression for the first time. After staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words. There's a lot of people who have no regard for human life. Even if I tell you this, it might not change anything though. But if you want to erase the specter of death sometimes, like with the reflection of the moon on the water, all you have to do is throw a small stone. I had no idea what she was trying to say. It's just I had listened to every word with my body and soul, or at least that's what I thought. This day next year, yes, June 1979, on this day, the foreman of the dam construction project will be killed. What? For the moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. By the foreman, did she mean the gruff old man I played mahjong with? Be killed? What makes you think? She didn't answer. She had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared the dam project would go away. But that wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that was already decided. No, it was as if she was already reporting the results. That sort of expression. After being killed in a gruesome manner, the body will be torn apart and disposed of. Murdered and dismembered. The next year, in June of 1980 of this day, Sadako's parents will be pushed to their deaths. Sadako! It's the first time I heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's story. It might be an accident. An unfortunate accident. The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with that lifeless look in her eyes. And then the year after that, this day of June of 1981, my parents will be killed. And the year after that, this day in June of 1982, Sadako's abusive aunt will have her head split open and die. The year after that, this day in June of 1983, or possibly a few days afterward, I will be killed. If all the deaths are preordained, then the last one would also be according to plan, but then whose plan would it be? This village is full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It'd be fine to believe that all the deaths in 1982 would work to somebody in the village. It'd be fine to believe that all the deaths would occur here were the discretion of people who control the village. But that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. There was no way the last death would fit in with anybody's plans. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals, but their goals were at odds with the last death. That's why the last death was unrelated to them. But that last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. Probably, definitely, I dare say. The last death would be a merciful one. A handkerchief or something being placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that? I want to live happily. That's my only wish. Surrounded by my precious friends, spending our days enjoyably. Only that. I don't wish for anything more than that. Rika, I don't want to die. The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in the end. Eventually, we were discovered by some drunks. The girl, as well as I, were dragged back to the festivities. Everybody was completely drunk, so even when they saw my head completely wrapped in bandages, they wouldn't let me leave. Well, certainly, if I was in good enough condition to slip out of the hospital, it must not be that serious. This girl was mingling with everybody, being pampered like a kitten. Her expression was adorable, nothing like the one from before, predicting her own death and whispering that she didn't want to die. Having said that, having a silly, lively conversation like this, it was hard to believe that these people were from the core of the extremist resistance group. Even if it was shell of its former self, it was a festival where people in the village gathered, so the 20-some-odd folks here should have included some of the village executives or other important members. Among those, there was no doubt that there were members that were of the Sonozaki family council in the attendance, meaning if we never met face-to-face before, there were people here who knew my identity. In a small village like this, they knew the faces of all the villagers that lived here. That's why without even saying anything, it soon became obvious that I was an outsider. But they actually seemed interested by that, by asking me all sorts of questions about Tokyo, drinking, while musing on the faint relationship the city had with the villagers and emphasizing with rather meager environment. The confidential talks with the minister were finished, his grandson was in police custody, everything was over. I might not have to be put in another paralysis situation. To me, they were only my adversaries because of my job. Outside of that, there was no reason I couldn't be friendly with them. The next time I visited this village, would it return to being a tranquil and peaceful place? If that happened, I might be able to take a relaxed walk around the village with her again. My cup was once again filled to the brim with beer. By the time I was able to get away, it was the middle of the night. The girl at some point disappeared. It seems her parents had told her to go home and sleep and she'd get out of a large yawn. The old folks, who had absolutely no remorse for making an injured person hang out with them, told me, as much as they laughed, I was just here drinking, so I had the thought to help a bit with cleanup. However, my help was refused on the grounds I was a guest. On top of that, they had a car prepared to take me back to the hospital. Losing the battle against my sleepiness inside the car, I was sound asleep until we reached the parking lot of the hospital. The front door of the hospital was naturally locked at this hour. I wandered around bewilderedly searching for the back entrance until somebody on night duty found me and let me inside. Where were you this late? Dr. Erie was worried, you know. Sorry for the trouble. I was held up by the people having a festival at the shrine. Oh, did they say something about everybody in the town council getting together for a drink? My condolences. Are your wounds alright? They're throbbing a bit. It's probably because of the alcohol, I think. Oh, that's right. The detective was with you, wanted to get in touch. Oops, I kept Oishi waiting. I glanced at the clock. No matter how I looked at it, it was way too late to call him now. I apologized to him tomorrow over the phone. I returned back to the hospital room and slipped into the bed that was still unmade from the time I went outside. Oh, that's no good. I have to turn off the lights. but my weariness had cut the cord powering my body, lulling me into a deep sleep. I'm sorry if I'm kind of making a little bit of mistakes. Hearing Rika say that makes me feel pain, especially after watching Go Sotsu. Even though, it wasn't that good, there were definitely times that I really felt a lot for Rika, because she's one of my favorite characters, other than, with Rena. So, Mother's Diary. I know who this belongs to, I believe. There was something I didn't like about my child. I first realized it when I started writing these things down. They never warn you about it in any books about raising children, but they aren't just a plaything. If they aren't able to feel love, even when they're not doing exactly as their parents want them to, then those parents are failures. This wasn't something like that, though. How can I say it? It's probably hard to express with mere words. I just want my child to be average. As long as they weren't falling behind, there wasn't any need for them to excel at something. As long as they acted appropriately for their age, I would have been fine with it. But my child had been different ever since kindergarten. While the children in her class were running around in excitement about the field trip the next day, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the other kids broke the equipment for the athletics festival and were apologizing fervently, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the teacher was reading a fun picture book, only she wasn't smiling. Even if they all got to eat a delicious bento, only she wasn't happy. If it was only this, it'd still be in the realm of understanding. However, what I don't understand about my child is if the aforementioned situations happened again. They now act in a manner befitting their age. I don't understand the principle behind that as a parent. Why were they indifferent about that field trip, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about the picture book, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about the bento, but happy about this one? The former and the latter in each situation seemed exactly the same to me. There was even times when I thought the former one was better. I don't understand that child's feelings. During parent-teacher meetings, the teacher always says the same thing. I'd always respond that I don't understand my own child, and we would mope together. My husband's always the optimist. Once that said the young child's feelings were different from an adult's, so if there were some things we didn't understand, we shouldn't worry about it. I laughed at his lack of urgency. One day when I was in a good mood, I took the effort to prepare a menu that my child would enjoy, but she only smiled with a vague expression of disinterest. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. One day when the weather was nice, the laundry I had hung up to dry was blown by a large gust of wind, causing the entire line to fall down, but she, watching me trying to pick up the laundry in a panic, stood there laughing. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. I think the same sort of thing happened countless times. Before I knew it, my child was only able to look at me with an indifferent expression on her face. I regret the fact that I have been a bad mother. Thinking that I should regain her trust, I thought to get back little by little with some light interactions. Seeing her do some of the craft work on the veranda, I called out to her. "These past few days have been nice and sunny. The air feels nice, doesn't it?" That child, with an indifferent look on her face I hated so much, looked up at me for a moment, then without a word returned to immersing herself in her craft work. Up until now I would have hit her on the head just for that. I held myself back. "What are you making? Is it a doll?"
A weather charm.
That child was using inserts from the newspaper to deftly make some weather charms. The forecast hadn't called for rain, but that child in her own way was praying these sunny days would continue. Being able to understand my own child for the first time in a while, I couldn't hide my own happiness. Bringing out a ball of yarn, I began to hang my child's cute sweater charms from the eaves of the house. "It's no good, Rika. The heads are too heavy, see? They've become reverse weather charms now. If they're like this, they'll call the rain instead of the sun." When I started to take them down, my child tugged at the hem of my skirt as if to stop me.
"That's because I made them to be upside down. They're fine."
Now you know who the tips were relating to. The one who wished for rain, Rika. And now you know Rika does not have a good relationship with her mom. But Rika, if they're upside down, they won't be a charm that calls for a sunny day, you know.
"I was making a charm for it to rain, so they're fine."
I desperately suppressed the emotions welling up inside of me. I was desperately trying to understand my child. "Oh, I see.
The morning glories in the garden were starting to get a little wilted from all the sun, so you wanted some rain, right? That child turned to me with the expression that I hated the most. I got bored of the clear weather. I don't understand. I just can't get that child. So now we know Rika is someone who gets bored really easily. And we know that she somehow knows the future. She knows that these things happen. And we know that this world is repeating over and over again. That's probably why she would be bored. Actually, I tend to like a lot of stories that have that timey-wimey stuff, like the Undertale thing and stuff like that. Huh? Next tip. During the family council, she buried herself under Oreo's futon again. Oreo dotes on her unwaveringly. No matter whatever insolence my child commits, she doesn't mind. It's almost as though my child is a kitten or something. Oreo dotes on her exactly like you would a kitten. As her mother, I chided her for doing that, until Oreo had said 3 times that it was fine. I chided her as a formality. Of course, she never lent an ear to any of my chidings. Knowing that Oreo was far above mine, she behaves like that. I don't like the cunning that was befitting of her age either. In any case, not only Oreo, but the rest of the old folk in the village spoil her too much. One day I was surprised. By chance on the way home from some shopping, I saw her by herself just outside a candy shop. My own child suddenly grabbed a snack, opened the package right there, and then started eating it. She didn't even make any attempt to pay for it. She didn't even think of looking around. It didn't even feel like she was shoplifting, more like she was brazenly eating snacks that was offered to her. When I began to admonish my child, the elderly shop owner appeared and covered for her. The owner gave the ridiculous excuse that he had said it was okay for that child to eat any of the snacks out by the entrance, so it was fine. When I tried to pay for the snacks that my child had eaten, the owner refused my money. During that exchange, more old folks had suddenly gathered around. It began to feel like I was the one in the wrong. The elderly people all put their hands together reverently in front of my child and repeatedly voiced their respects. I was born into the Fruity family, so it wasn't like I didn't know why she was being treated specially. When I was still young, it was something I heard often from my grandmother. If by the chance the child that I gave birth to was a girl, that child would be the living incarnation of Oyashiro. All the older folk believe she's the living incarnation of Oyashiro and spoiled her rotten. And not only did they spoil her, but they even told her that she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro, that she had a divine power, and threw all sorts of strange folk tales her way. So she may have begun to believe herself that she was a special existence. I went around and told everybody that it wasn't good for her upbringing, so to stop telling her all these strange things. But there's no unrooting elderly people's deep-seated superstitions. I told my child not to listen to them, but it ended up being that she stopped listening to me. Between all the old folks in the village who would dote on her, and myself who only scolded her, there was no wonder who she would listen to. There was no mistaking that the reason she had become strange was because of the elderly villagers. There was no doubt they had shoved her full of strange folk tales and superstitions since she was young. If it wasn't for that, there was no doubt my child would have been cute and normal. I don't really like Rika's mom. She just sounds like a bitch. I can't. It's like, what a normal child. Whatever. I mean, we all know that Rika is like the context, but whatever. Yeah, one sunny parent-teacher day, there was a cooking class and my child was making curry rice with a practiced hand. While the other children her age were awkwardly using kitchen knives, that child was wielding hers deftly. The teacher approached me with a smile on their face, saying it must be a result of learning it at home. I managed to play it off with a vague smile and nod in response. That was because I had never once taught my child how to make curry rice. Even then, she was peeling vegetables with a practiced hand, adding them into the pot in the order of which took longer to cook. For a normal parent, they might unintentionally clap their hands together, happy at their child's actions, but in my case it was different. There was no mistaking that somebody had taught her how to make that curry rice when I wasn't taking care of her. Thinking of that, I quietly fell into an unpleasant mood. When I asked, it seems that she could also sew and do laundry. I had never taught her how to do those, and again, never saw her do it around the house. Be it cooking or sewing or the laundry. Again, that was probably because the old villagers taught her all sorts of rubbish when I wasn't looking. Shouldn't you be proud of that? Sheesh.
And not only that, they probably taught her all sorts of strange superstitions, trying to prop her up as the living incarnation of Oyashiro. I said as much to my husband, suggesting that we should keep our child away from the elderly folk, but my husband, who was in the position of being the head priest of the Furude Shrine, had little power against the elderly who supported it. He took the rather uncommitted stance of saying that, as long as she was being doted upon, wasn't it fine? I argued against that she was our child and should be completely normal. That was what the elderly expecting, that she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro, was simply odd. The elderly villagers believed that child has divine powers. We would discuss the weather for the following day, but there were many times when I left the house without an umbrella and came back soaking wet. Rather than having clairvoyance, that was just secondhand knowledge from her watching the news all the time. Things that she knew that she shouldn't have known were just a result of people who were trying to indoctrinate her and the people who were gossiping getting together in the village. However, there were certain days when everybody thought it was going to be sunny all day, and that child would stubbornly not go out without an umbrella. It would occasionally rain, and in the end we'd be saved. There might have also been times where Rika knew of major accidents in foreign countries faster than the news did. I thought she must have heard it break over the radio or something, knowing things that she shouldn't have. Something like that was in front of me right now, wasn't it? That child was making curry rice when there shouldn't have been anybody who taught her how to. No, that couldn't possibly be the case. Somebody had taught her, indoctrinated her when I wasn't taking care of her. Somebody had indoctrinated Rika with something. Furude's curry is absolutely splendid. I'll give it a gold star.
Nippa!
Where did you learn to cook, Furude? At home?
Yes, at home.
The other parents in attendance were impressed. Lies, all lies. I didn't teach her anything. Who was it? Who was it? Who was the person who had completely indoctrinated my child? She was my normal, average daughter, not the living incarnation of Oyashiro! Interesting. So, we can end this today. Midsummer 1985. Okay. We'll go back and read that some other time. And, alright, thanks for showing up. Bye-bye.